Nail check. Tell me if you're jealous of my thyroid nails. I'm gonna go through my TBR for 2025. I have them all stacked up here, and then I have copy and pasted their summaries from like Amazon just to give you an idea of what they're about. I'm gonna start with what I'm already reading, which there's 4, but I only have, that's not true. That's not it. Where are you? Oh, there you are. I'm currently reading 4 books. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. The bigger copy of this is in my stack of books that I will talk about later. So my name is Kvoth. I hope I'm saying that right. I've stolen princesses back from sleeping Barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I've spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. So begins a tale unequaled in fantasy literature, the story of a hero told in his own voice. It's a tale of sorrow, a tale of survival, a tale of one man's search for meaning in his universe, and how that search and the indomitable will that drove it gave birth to a legend. I've started this, I'm about 35% of the way through the book. It is really, really good. When I tell you it's really easy to read, it doesn't feel like I'm reading. It feels like I'm talking to an old friend or like sitting down with an old friend that I'm catching up with. It's really easy to listen to his story, and it's honestly really interesting. I love fantasy, and this is definitely fantasy. There's a magic system, and there are already like very charming characters that you've come to love without barely even knowing them. Second book that I'm currently reading, Mammoth by Eva Baltasar. Mammoth's protagonist is a disenchanted young lesbian. She's inexperienced, irritated by life, eager to gestate, and determined to strip everything else down to essentials. She seduces men at random, swaps her urban habitat for an isolated farmhouse, befriends a shepherd, nurses lambs, battles stray cats, waits tables, cleans house, and dabbles in sex work, all in pursuit of a life in the raw. This small bomb of a novel, very thin, not remotely pastoral, builds to a howling crescendo of social despair, leaving us at the mercy of Eva Baltasar's wild voice. This also, all 3 of these books by Eva Baltasar, there's Permafrost, Boulder, and Mammoth. They're standalones, but it's written as like a trilogy, so it doesn't matter what order you read them in. The writing in Boulder sold me, and I got my recommendation for Boulder from Jack Edwards, Jack in the Books, on YouTube. He's one of my favorite booktubers. The writing in Boulder has convinced me that Eva Baltasar could get a stick and scratch out something in the dirt, and I would think it's gold. The writing is just incredible no matter what. Every sentence in here, again, very thin. It's probably barely 100 pages. 103, sorry, pages. Every page of Boulder that I have is tabbed. Every single page. I've written all over it. I've underlined, I've highlighted, I've cried on it. I have absolutely fawned over how she writes a sex scene that is so intimate, but so classy in the way that she wrote it, and so just like lust is dripping off the page, and it's like barely a page long, and like the pages are not absolutely full in this book. There's wide margins at the top and the bottom. Also, all 3 of them are translated by Julia Sanchez. Incredible work. Incredible work from both Eva Baltasar and Julia Sanchez. I cannot say enough. I'm very excited to be reading this. I've been reading this for a month. And when I tell you I'm avoiding it because I'm afraid to finish it. Because once I've read it, I can't read it again for the first time, and then it will be done. And I am terrified of not being able to read things for the first time when I know I'm really enjoying them. So I'll be reading this probably at 5 pages a month. No, I'm just kidding. When I finish the other 3 books that I'm currently reading, I know I'm just gonna pour through this one, and I'm very excited about it. The third book that I'm reading, I just picked up yesterday, and I'm really frustrated with myself because I'm currently reading another book that I thought I would just get into, read it, and be on my way, and I'm putting it off because I'm also really enjoying it, but it's also part of a 6-book series. So that's Red Rising, and I'll get to that in a second. But yesterday, I had this copy of this for a couple of days. I got it from Amazon about 4 days ago. I picked it up yesterday and just like pounded through 50 pages in like an hour. I couldn't put it down. So far, it's not really gripping, but it's really interesting, and I want to know what happens. I love how it's written. I'm in chapter 5, I believe, but it's Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Cyrus Shams, or Cyrus maybe, but I grew up with Hannah Montana, so I'm gonna say Cyrus. Cyrus Shams is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss. His mother's plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless accident, and his father's life in America was circumscribed by his work killing chickens at a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him to examine the mysteries of his past, toward an uncle who rode through Iranian battlefields dressed as the angel of death to inspire and comfort the dying, and toward his mother through a painting discovered in a Brooklyn art gallery that suggests she may not have been who or what she seemed. So interested. so interested. Also, the color of it, I'm obsessed with. And I love a book that does this with the front cover. There's like an accent panel and the inside is just praise. But you have this main colored cover with like an accent strip. I love how this looks. It's very like appealing to me to just stare at. And it's like this kind of textured matte finish. And it's a sensory like wonderland, like intellectually and physically. So I've already started tabbing, and when I tab, like while I'm reading, I want them to be messy, and then I'll go back to each one of them, highlight and underline whatever I want to highlight, make notes, whatever, and then I will straighten it out and make it to where it barely sticks off the page, kind of like this one. And I get these like packages, like big packages of these like annotation tabs from Amazon. And it's like $6 for maybe 20 of these things. And you can get different color palettes, different styles, everything. But they're like sheer so you can see through them, and they're matte. And I think with a certain kind of pen you can write on them, and it like lays well. So third book I'm reading. This is the book that's part of the 6-book series, Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is like the epitome of overthrowing the government, which is a very relevant theme for me right now. I live for the dream that my children will be born free, she says, that they will be what they like, that they will own the land their father gave them. I live for you, I say sadly. Ao kisses my cheek. Then you must live for more. That's a quote from the book. Darrow is a Red, a member of the lowest caste in the color-coded society of the future. Like his fellow Reds, he works all day, believing that he and his people are making the surface of Mars livable for future generations. Yet he toils willingly, trusting that his blood and sweat will one day result in a better world for his children. But Darrow and his kind have been betrayed. Soon he discovers that humanity reached the surface generations ago. Vast cities and lush wilds spread across the planet. Darrow and Reds like him are nothing more than slaves to a decadent ruling class. Top versus bottom. Sound familiar? Inspired by a longing for justice and driven by the memory of lost love, Darrow sacrifices everything to infiltrate the legendary institute, a proving ground for the dominant gold caste, where the next generation of humanity's overlords struggle for power. He will be forced to compete for his life and the very future of civilization against the best and most brutal of society's ruling class. There he will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if it means he has to become one of them to do so. So it's really good. Here's another example of sticky tabs that you can get from Amazon. That's what I've been using to tab this one, so I just stick it in the book. It can be a bookmark, but I've also been using this bookmark, and I got this template off of Etsy and then just printed it on cardstock. But it's like a library card bookmark. I have Hamnet, which was incredible. Maggie O'Farrell, I'm so glad you're alive and writing. Red Rising, which I'm currently reading. The Vanishing Half, it was this month's read for my book club. I just couldn't get it. Like, I listened to the audiobook. I listened to like 3.5 hours of the audiobook, and it was good, but it didn't grab me. So, and then I wound up forcing myself through another hour of the audiobook, and it's not bad, but I read the summary from somewhere online, and I think I can live without finishing it. And I'm past like forcing myself to finish a book, so I'm gonna embrace the DNF, not finish The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I'm so sorry, Britt, it's not you, it's not your writing. Sorry. It's me. Okay, that's what I'm currently reading. Up next on currently reading, this is not even included in this like TBR. Like I've never read 1984, I haven't read Animal Farm. I've read Fahrenheit 451, but I don't remember anything about it. But I read what 1984 was about, and this is also very relevant for the political climate. For me, I enjoy reading about that. It makes me feel better. It's a form of escapism that I can maybe try and imagine is like happening in our country. 1984 by George Orwell. Winston Smith toes the party line, rewriting history to satisfy the demands of the Ministry of Truth. With each lie he writes, Winston grows to hate the party that seeks power for its own sake and persecutes those who dare to commit thought crimes. But as he starts to think for himself, Winston can't escape the fact that Big Brother is always watching. A startling and haunting novel, 1984 creates an imaginary world that is completely convincing from start to finish. Imaginary world. This isn't supposed to be a guide. Imaginary. No one can deny the novel's hold on the imaginations of whole generations or the power of its admonitions, a power that seems to grow, not lessen, with the passage of time. Isn't that the goddamn truth? So this is going on the pile right on top of Red Rising, Martyr, Mammoth, and The Name of the Wind. So it's a good mix, I think, to be reading all at once. Moving on to the actual TBR, there are 2.5 stacks of books beside me that are like 1.5 feet tall. One of my favorite books of all time is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. It was very like nihilistically beautiful, and that was all for me That's my kind of book. I remember being in middle school reading Where the Red Fern Grows, and it was in the middle of the night, like sitting in my living room. My parents were asleep, and I had a flashlight, like a like tack gear, whatever the like industrial flashlight is, a handheld one, reading this book and just sobbing. Like I couldn't catch my breath, and it woke my parents up and they came to see if I was okay. So that's what A Little Life did to me at the end of the book. I made it through the whole book without crying until the very end, where Harold's letter was written to Willem. So that did me in and sold me on her as a writer. So I have To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. In an alternate version of 1893 America, New York is part of the Free States, where people may live and love whomever they please, or so it seems. The fragile young scion of a distinguished family resists betrothal to a worthy suitor, drawn to a charming music teacher of no means. In a 1993 Manhattan, also where A Little Life was set, besieged by the AIDS epidemic, a young Hawaiian man lives with his much older, wealthier partner, hiding his troubled childhood and the fate of his father. And in 2093, in a world driven by, a world riven? That's a word I've never heard before. In a world riven with plagues and governed by a totalitarian rule, a powerful scientist's damaged granddaughter tries to navigate life without him and solve the mystery of her husband's disappearances. These three sections comprise an ingenious symphony, as recurring notes and themes deepen and enrich one another. A townhouse in Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village, illness and treatments that come at a terrible cost, wealth and squalor, the weak and the strong, race, the definition of family and of nationhood, the dangerous righteousness of the powerful and of the revolutionaries, the longing to find a place in an earthly paradise, and the gradual realization that it can't exist. What unites not just the characters, but these Americas, are their reckonings with the qualities that make us human: fear, love, shame, need, and loneliness. So I am sold on this. I cannot wait to read it. I've had it forever and just haven't gotten around to it, and this is gonna be the year. It is 3 days later and I am slightly happier now. What is the sun doing? Oh my god. Okay, fine, I'll be the main character if you insist, but goddamn, can you stop blinding me? Spotlight operator, what is this? Let's go. Watching a cloud move and burning my corneas. I'm slightly happier now than I was 5 minutes ago, because my husband cleaned the kitchen the other day when he just suddenly felt productive, and he hid these from me. And by hid, I mean he put them in a very obvious spot, and I just don't see them because I have object permanence issues. I am here to finish the still very long TBR. The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. After 4 harrowing years on the Western Front, Tom Sherborne returns to Australia and takes a job as the lighthouse keeper on Janus Rock. Nearly half a day's journey from the coast to this isolated island, where the supply boat comes once a season, Tom brings a young, bold, and loving wife, Isabel. Years later, after 2 miscarriages and 1 stillbirth, the grieving Isabel hears a baby's cries on the wind. A boat has washed up on shore carrying a dead man and a living baby. Tom, who keeps meticulous records and whose moral principles have withstood a horrific war, wants to report the man and infant immediately, but Isabel insists the baby is a gift from God, and against Tom's judgment they claim her as their own and name her Lucy. When she is 2, Tom and Isabel return to the mainland and are reminded that there are other people in the world. Their choice has devastated one of them. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. War and Peace centers broadly on Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812 and follows 3 of the best-known characters in literature. Pierre Bezukhov, the illegitimate son of a count who is fighting for his inheritance and yearning for spiritual fulfillment. Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, who leaves behind his family to fight in the war against Napoleon, and Natasha Rostov, the beautiful young daughter of a nobleman who intrigues both men. As Napoleon's army invades, Tolstoy vividly follows characters from diverse backgrounds, peasants and nobility, civilians and soldiers, as they struggle with the problems unique to their era, their history, and their culture. And as the novel progresses, these characters transcend their specificity, becoming some of the most moving and human figures in world literature. That's a lot. Is she a thick baddie, too? 1273. The Overstory by Richard Powers. It's a Pulitzer Prize winner. The Overstory is a sweeping, impassioned work of activism and resistance that is also a stunning evocation of the natural world. From the roots to the crown and back to the seeds, Richard Powers' 12th novel unfolds in concentric rings of interlocking fables that range from antebellum New York to the late 20th century timber wars of the Pacific Northwest and beyond. There is a world alongside ours, vast, slow, interconnected, resourceful, magnificently inventive, and almost invisible to us. This is the story of a handful of people who learn how to see that world and who are drawn up into its unfolding catastrophe. Very excited about this. I'm very much a tree hugger kind of person. Like, if I catch you littering or find out that you litter, like I won't be your friend anymore. And I've done that. So I've tried to get into the audiobook twice and I can't seem to for some reason. Like the voice that's reading it to me just, it doesn't, like Donna Tartt, it's not compatible with my ears. So that's not my business. Out of Her Mind, Women Writing on Madness. And Rebecca Shannonhouse is the person who put this together, but it captures the best literature by and about women struggling with madness. A remarkable chronicle of gifted and unconventional women who have spun their inner turmoil into literary gold. The collection features classic short stories, breathtaking literary excerpts, key historical writings, and previously unpublished letters by Zelda Fitzgerald. Woman Eating by Claire Coda. Lydia is hungry. She's always wanted to try Japanese food. Sashimi, ramen, onigiri with sour plum stuffed inside. The food her Japanese father liked to eat. And then there is bubble tea and iced coffee, ice cream and cake, and foraged herbs and plants, and the vegetables grown by the other young artists at the London studio space she is secretly squatting in. But Lydia can't eat any of these things. Her body doesn't work like those of other people. The only thing she can digest is blood, and it turns out that sourcing fresh pig's blood in London, where she is living away from her vampire mother for the first time, is much more difficult than she anticipated. This is actually pretty short. I might like get through this soon. This sounds so like quirky. Then there are the humans, the other artists at the studio space, the people at the gallery she interns at, the strange men that follow her after dark, and Ben, a boyish, goofy grin to artists she is developing feelings for. Lydia knows that they are her natural prey, but she can't bring herself to feed on them. In her windowless studio, where she paints and studies the work of other artists, binge watches Buffy the Vampire Slayer and videos of people eating food on YouTube and Instagram, Lydia considers her place in the world. She has many of the things humans wish for: perpetual youth, near invulnerability, immortality, but she is miserable. She is lonely and she is hungry, always hungry. Felt in my soul. As Lydia develops as a woman and an artist, she will learn that she must reconcile the conflicts within her, between her demon and human sides, her mixed ethnic heritage, and her relationship with food and, in turn, humans, if she is to find a way to exist in the world. Before any of this, however, she must eat. And I love this cover. I could look at this all day. This and like there's probably like 7 other covers that I've seen in the last 2 years that look similar to this kind of style, and I just think it's great. Also, this is a 1-page cover. It's like Martyr, but I love the style where it looks like it's a partial front and then like an accent strip. Like for some reason that just works really well with my brain. The visual receptors are happy. On Earth But Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I've seen this cover everywhere for what feels like my entire life, and I've started this book twice, and it's just not been the right time. Also, my bangs are about to be my 13th reason, so. On Earth But Briefly Gorgeous is a letter from a son to a mother who cannot read. Written when the speaker, Little Dog, is in his late 20s, the letter unearths a family's history that began before he was born. A history whose epicenter is rooted in Vietnam, and serves as a doorway into parts of his life his mother has never known. All of it leading to an unforgettable revelation. At once a witness to the fraught yet undeniable love between a single mother and her son, it is also a brutally honest exploration of race, class, and masculinity. Asking questions central to our American moment, immersed as we are in addiction, violence, and trauma, but undergirded by compassion and tenderness. On Earth But Briefly Gorgeous is as much about the power of telling one's own story as it is about the obliterating silence of not being heard. Damn, well said. John Green, The Anthropocene Reviewed. The Anthropocene is the current geological age in which humans have profoundly reshaped the planet and its biodiversity. In this remarkable symphony of essays, best-selling author John Green reviews different facets of the human-centered planet on a 5-star scale, from the QWERTY keyboard and sunsets to Canada geese and penguins of Madagascar. Funny, complex, and rich with detail, the reviews chart the contradictions of contemporary humanity. This was also a recommendation from Allison Pages, and I have had this forever being like 2 years probably, and just haven't gotten around to reading it. It's been on my TBR shelf for a long time, and I think now's gonna be the time. I really like, I think out of all the books that are in this TBR, I think I'm like leaning toward knocking out a bunch of shorter ones and then devoting time to like the middle of the year to read longer ones. So, and then whatever's mixed in is like mood reading for whatever I feel like reading. Assistant to the Villain. This summary is so long, it's insane. In summary, it's just a synopsis, but it's like 7 paragraphs. So a villain puts out a wanted ad for an assistant. Notorious high-ranking villain seeks loyal, level-headed assistant for unspecified office duties, supporting staff for random mayhem and terror, and other dark things in general. Discretion is a must, excellent benefits. Honestly, I'd apply for that. That's all I'm gonna say. Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. Today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot, and paradoxically it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely talk about meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mickey Kendall, but food insecurity, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. All too often, however, the focus is not on basic survival for the many, but on increasing privilege for the few. That feminists refuse to prioritize these issues has only exacerbated the age-old problem of both internecine? I've never seen that word before, oh my gosh. Discord, and women who rebuff at carrying the title. Moreover, prominent white feminists broadly suffer from their own myopia with regard to how things like race, class, sexual orientation, and ability intersect with gender. How can we stand in solidarity as a movement, Kendall asks, when there is the distinct likelihood that some women are oppressing others? In her searing collection of essays, Mickey Kendall takes aim at the legitimacy of the modern feminist movement, arguing that it has chronically failed to address the needs of all but a few women. Drawing on her own experiences with hunger, violence, hypersexualization, along with incisive commentary on reproductive rights, politics, pop culture, the stigma of mental health, and more, Hood Feminism delivers an irrefutable indictment of a movement in flux. Great. Love this. Again, been on my TBR list in my TBR pile. I have the book. I've had it for like 2 years. I went on a book buying spree about 2 years ago, obviously, and probably spent like $1,000 on books all at once. And then proceeded to not read them, got a Kindle, and then continued to read on my Kindle for the last like year and a half. So Dance of Thieves, another fantasy. Dance of Thieves by Mary Pearson. A formidable outlaw family that claims to be the first among nations, a son destined to lead thrust suddenly into power, 3 fierce young women of the Rattan, the Queen's premier guard, a legendary street thief leading a mission determined to prove herself, a dark secret that is a threat to the entire continent. When outlaw leader meets reformed thief, a cat and mouse game of false moves ensues, bringing them intimately together in a battle that may cost them their lives and their hearts. I've got the image of the second book, Vow of Thieves, I think. Yeah, Vow of Thieves burned in my brain, and it's like this but red. And I want to get to that and purchase it, but I have to get through this first. A map on the inside. Original. When the Moon Hatched is also a big bitch. I feel like that animatronic avatar at Disney World, Disneyland, whichever one, that like lost power suddenly and then just, she's like mid, the avatar shaman, she's like, oh. That's me. When my back starts to hurt, that's it. I'm like, I'm gonna turn into a rock.
It's not just a boulder, it's a rock.
When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. The creators did not expect their beloved dragons to sail skyward upon their end, to curl into balls just beyond gravity's grip, littering the sky with tombstones, with moons. They certainly did not expect them to fall. As an assassin for the rebellion group, Rave's job is to complete orders and never get caught. When a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down, blood spills, hearts break, and Rave finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, a group of powerful fae who turn her into a political statement. Luigi, crushed by the loss of his great love, Con Vagar took the head of a king and donned his melted crown. Melted crown? Was giving Game of Thrones. Now on a tireless quest to quell the never-ebbing ache in his chest, he is lured by a clue into the capital's high-security prison where he stumbles upon the imprisoned Rave. Echoes of the past race between them. There's more to their story than meets the eye, but some truths are too poisonous to swallow. I've seen people compare this alongside ACOTAR and like Crescent City and like the big five or however many there are, like fantasy romance series, and that's all you have to say to me. It's just pure coincidence that this woman's name is also Sarah, because I will read anything Sarah J Maas writes, and if you compare this to that, I'm pretty easy to please with like mainstream books, and if it takes off really well in the fantasy world, then I'm probably going to be pleased by it as well, and I tend to just go with it. And I've heard so much about it, I've seen so much about it, and then finally saw someone say like, oh yeah, I've read all the big like popular fantasy romances like Crescent City, Throne of Glass, ACOTAR, like When the Moon Hatched, and I was like, oh, I haven't read that, so might as well go pick it up. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I want the other cover of this book. I don't know how I got this. I don't know when I got this. I don't know how a TV show cover of a book got into my possession, but it cannot be. And as soon as I replace it with like the appropriate cover, this one, this will be in a little library somewhere near me, because I cannot do this. The second you bring a human into anything like fantasy that's been either written or anime, I don't want a live action. I don't think live action should be a thing ever, unless it's a general, like the original is live action like on Netflix. But if you take a good anime or a good book and then you turn it into people, fuck you. So that's a really long summary. I think it's like 6, obviously, wow. A group of found family, and they perform heists and do Robin Hood type shit, I think. Well, I'll let you know whenever I read it. You'll see the reading vlog whenever that happens. The 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I've wanted to read this for so long. I've heard so much about it, and I very badly want to get this read. This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with a great red rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land long familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon, and where there is no mercy. That's vague as hell, but it's enough to bait me, so. Circe by Madeline Miller. This bitch wrote The Song of Achilles, and that shit made me cry. date. So it is safe to say that I will be sticking my nose in this book at some point this year to get this read. I've had it recommended to me multiple times by multiple people that I trust their recommendations. She's a good, thick little standalone. She's thicker than Song of Achilles, and I'm excited to get this under my belt. In the house of Helios, the god of sun and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Circe is a strange child, not powerful like her father, not viciously alluring like her mother. Turning to the world of mortals for companionship, she discovers that she does possess power, the power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods themselves. That's all I'm gonna say. That's a really long summary. Witchcraft, gods, a girl, that's all I need. The first book that I read with my book club is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and that shit was an instant add to like my forever favorite shelf, like favorites of all time shelf. It made me feel things, it made me excited, it made me happy, sad, shocked, everything, and I love what it stood for. If you can't tell by this point, I love a revolution. And like the revolution vibe, the Poppy War. I only have the first book. When I finish it, I'll get the second one and third one. When Ren aced the Kiju, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, it was a shock to everyone, to the test officials who couldn't believe a war orphan from Rooster Province could pass without cheating, to Ren's guardians who believed they'd finally be able to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, and to Ren herself who realized she was finally free of the servitude and despair that had made up her daily existence. That she got into Sign Guard, the most elite military school in Nikon, was even more surprising. But surprises aren't always good, because being a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not an easy thing at Sign Guard. Targeted from the outset by rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Ren discovers she possesses a lethal, unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism. Oh, stop. That's enough for me. Bright Dead Things by Ada Limon. How to triumph like a girl. I like the lady horses best. How they make it all look easy. Like running 40 miles per hour is as fun as taking a nap. Or grass. I like their lady horse swagger after winning. Ears up, girls, ears up. But mainly, let's be honest, that was giving The Handmaid's Tale. But mainly, let's be honest, I like that they're ladies. As if this big, dangerous animal is also a part of me. That somewhere inside the delicate skin of my body, there pumps an 8-pound female horse heart, giant with power, heavy with blood. Don't you want to believe it? Don't you want to lift my shirt and see the huge beating genius machine that thinks... No, it knows it's going to come in first. Interesting blurb, but okay. Daughter of Light by Garrett Kerbo. Eileen is a warlock with an affinity for water, using her power to protect her village in Mohana from an invading army. Despised by her companions, feared by her leaders, and hunted by her enemies, Eileen's life only becomes more dangerous when Prince Finn Hadar, as punishment for a recent crime, is sent by his father to kidnap her. Desperate to make his father proud, he embarks on a quest through the arduous red desert and the misty mountains of Mohana. That's where I'm gonna stop. There's 2 more paragraphs for that. So I like what I've heard so far, and I've wanted to read this for, again, 2 years now. I got it in my little buying spree. So that may have been 4 years actually, because I found him on TikTok, or he found my For You page. The algorithm brought him to me. So I'm excited to read this. Happy to support an indie author. Mating by Norman Rush. The narrator of this splendidly expansive novel of high intellect and grand passion is an American anthropologist at loose ends in the South African Republic of Botswana. She has a noble and exacting mind, a compelling waist, and a busted thesis project. She also has a yen for Nelson Denoon, a charismatic intellectual who is rumored to have founded a secretive and unorthodox utopian society in a remote corner of the Kalahari, one in which he is virtually the only man. This book was recommended. God damn, that's small type. That's a really tiny font. This was on a like staff favorites pick of like old classics, bringing them back around or something, or old books that were good. It didn't get enough hype when they came out, so it caught my eye. I like the cover of it, and then the like note card that the staff member left had a very interesting summary on it, and it made me want to buy it, so I did. White Fragility, Why Understanding Racism Can Be So Hard for White People by Robin DiAngelo. In this vital, necessary, and beautiful book, anti-racist educator Robin DiAngelo deftly illuminates the phenomenon of white fragility and allows us to understand racism as a practice not restricted to bad people. Referring to the defensive moves that white people make when challenged racially, white fragility is characterized by emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and by behaviors including argumentation and silence. These behaviors in turn function to reinstate white racial equilibrium and prevent any meaningful cross-racial dialogue. In this in-depth exploration, DiAngelo examines how white fragility develops, how it protects racial inequality, and what we can do to engage more constructively. Our administration could do to read this right now. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I've read The Great Alone and The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I'm dying to get my hands on a paperback copy of The Women that's not going to cost me $40 fucking. But until then, I have The Nightingale. With courage, grace, and powerful insight, bestselling author Kristen Hanna captures the epic panorama of World War II and illuminates an intimate part of history seldom seen, the Women's War. The Nightingale Nightingale tells the stories of two sisters separated by years and experience, by ideals, passion, and circumstance, each embarking on her own dangerous path toward love, survival, and freedom. German-occupied, war-torn France. A heartbreakingly beautiful novel that celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and the durability of women. It is a novel for everyone, a novel for a lifetime. So the woman could, again, she's in the leagues of Sarah J Maas, but just fiction for me. This is a middle grade reading book. A Wolf Called Wander. He essentially gets separated from his pack and has to like grow up basically and make like have his own journey, live his own life, and then eventually make his way back to his pack. But it's interesting to me because it's inspired by an actual wolf named OR7 who traveled 1,000 miles across the Pacific Northwest and was tracked by a conservation agency. I've seen the cover and I read the blurb like forever ago when I was standing in a Barnes & Noble physically, and I remembered it, and then I saw it again recently and picked it up because why not? You Only Live Once, Hyperbole and a Half, and Solutions and Other Problems, both by Ali Brosh, both worth every ounce of time that you give them. They bring joy, they bring happiness. They're perfect. She's perfect. That's all I have to say. But I will show you the art inside of them. And they're heavy. They are bricks. I've never laughed as hard as I've laughed reading the first one. Haven't read the second one yet, but I want to reread the first one and lead into the second one. I'm getting a little bit of a headache, so I'm gonna see if these glasses will help me with that. Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. There's some kind of scandal involved in this, but essentially it's like a woman who's not ready for kids crosses paths at the right time with two kids who I think are broken up from their family that need a place to stay, and it's two girls. It sounds interesting to me, but it's a long one. Okay. Memphis, 1939. 12-year-old Ro Foss and her 4 younger siblings live a magical life aboard their family's Mississippi River shanty boat. But when their father must rush their mother to the hospital one stormy night, Rill is left in charge until strangers arrive in force. Wrenched from all that is familiar and thrown into a Tennessee Children's Home Society orphanage, the Foss children are assured that they will soon be returned to their parents, but they quickly realize the dark truth. At the mercy of the facility's real-life director, the cruel Georgia Tan, Rill fights to keep her sisters and brother together. Aiken, South Carolina, present day. Born into wealth and privilege, Avery Stanford seems to have it all. A successful career, a handsome fiancé, and a lavish wedding on the horizon. But when she returns home to help her father with a health crisis, a chance encounter leaves her with uncomfortable questions and compels her to take a journey through her family's long-hidden history on a path that will ultimately lead either to devastation or to redemption. Not sure what's gonna happen in here, but excited to find out. The Crucible, Arthur Miller. This is a classic. I haven't read it. It's about 50 pages long. No, it's more than that. It's 140. The Crucible brilliantly explores the threshold between individual guilt and mass hysteria, personal spite and collective evil. It is a play that is not only relentlessly suspenseful and vastly moving, but that compels. This tells you nothing about it. Wow. Okay, well I'm gonna start this over. The Crucible by Arthur Miller. The place is Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. An enclave of rigid piety huddled on the edge of a wilderness. Its inhabitants believe unquestioningly in their own sanctity, but in Arthur Miller's edgy masterpiece, that very belief will have poisonous consequences when a vengeful teenager accuses a rival of witchcraft, and then when those accusations multiply to consume the entire village. Nettle and Bone, T. Kingfisher. Mara, a shy, convent-raised, third-born daughter, is relieved not to be married off for the sake of her parents' throne. Her older sister wasn't so fortunate though, and her royal husband is as abusive as he is powerful. From the safety of the convent, Mara wonders who will come to her sister's rescue and put a stop to this. But after years of watching their families and kingdoms pretend all is well, Mara realizes if any hero is coming, it will have to be Mara herself. If Mara can complete 3 impossible tasks. This looks like ACOTAR wrapped in a different cover. That sounds familiar. A witch will grant her the tools she needs, but as is the way in stories of princes and the impossible, these tasks are only the beginning of Mara's strange and enchanting journey to save her sister and topple a throne. Guess I'll read ACOTAR book 1 again. Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This is the second book in the Serpent and the Wings of Night series. There's gotta be a better name. A Crowns of Nyaxia novel. It says the book 2 of the Nightborn duet. And I was like, but book 3 just came out. I read the first one, loved the first one, and I have to read this one, and then I think the third one came out like a couple of months ago, so I'm excited to read that too. This is the bigger version of The Name of the Wind that I was showing you earlier in my currently reading. This is the physical copy that I will be currently reading, but I showed you the mass market paperback version, which is god-awfully smaller, somehow still just as thick. You can see how badly I hated reading this, because I broke the spine in multiple places before I even started the book, because I wanted it to be easy to open. And it worked, but it just hurts to hold something so fucking bulky for so long. So here's the first one. Here's the second one, Wise Man's Fear. And the third one, is a sore topic to talk about. Patrick, come on. Patrick, they know it's on your computer. The people of the internet, we saw it on your desktop when you screen shared your fucking computer. Write it, publish it, get it out there, but please do it right. I appreciate all that you've done for us so far. This is a lot, truly, but we need the third part, please. Or just give it to Brandy Sandy to finish, please. Just send him the file, send him all your notes, and put us out of our misery the right way. With love. The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. A big bitch of a book. Not Samantha Shannon, I've never seen her before, but this book is big as hell, and the second one is too. A Day of Fallen Night, I think it's the second one. There's dragons involved in this. There's magic. The House of Berethnet has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabron. Ugh. Still unwed, an old maid. Ew. Please. Queen Sabron the Ninth must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Children don't fix everything, okay? Ede Durin is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Ede keeps a watchful eye on Sabron, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. This is literally just Bridgerton with Queen Charlotte and Lady Danbury. That's it. But fantasy and with dragons and like courts and stuff. So, or I guess courts was also a thing in Bridgerton, so. Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. I want to read this book so that I could experience what the last owner experienced with all these fucking tabs. Look at that, man, and bless her. I'm gonna cover her name, but her name is in here. She wrote a legend here so that you know what they're, like what all of them are. And I love to get a well-loved book from a bookstore when it's had a previous owner that you can tell got in there and understood it all. Their Eyes Were Watching God is an enduring Southern love story, sparkling with wit, beauty, and heartfelt wisdom, told in the captivating voice of a woman who refuses to live in sorrow, bitterness, fear, or foolish romantic dreams. It is the story of a fair-skinned, fiercely independent Janie Crawford and her evolving selfhood through 3 marriages in a life marked by poverty, trials, and purpose. A true literary wonder, Hurston's masterwork remains as relevant and affecting today as when it was first published, perhaps the most widely read and highly regarded novel in the entire canon of African American literature. Letters to the Person I Was. This is poetry by Sana Abilail. I don't know how to say that appropriately. I hope I didn't butcher it. The title alone is enough to get me because I don't struggle with it anymore. But for a long time, I struggled with the concept of like having to mourn the person that I was in my 20s. I think my late teens and early 20s, because I have a lot of health problems that have taken a huge toll on my body and my brain. And I used to be thin and fit and not have body problems, and now I have weight on me that has only added to the autoimmune issues that I experience, and I had to mourn a version of myself that I no longer know, and I only have evidence of her in pictures. And I'm not sad about it anymore, and I don't think I was sad about it when I was mourning either, but it was a part of my story that it's a chapter of my life that's closed. And I would love to write about that sometime soon. I might make a video also about that because I'm getting into more writing now. But I'm getting into writing, so I might make a video about that and like why I want to write. But poetry books are easy for me to get into and get through because they don't have much text in them, but they have a lot of meaning in the words that are there. I'm interested to see what's in this because I think it will be relevant to me, my journey, and my heart. 2 left. We're in the home stretch. 2 books left. I Want to Hurt. So I'm gonna read 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I've never seen a bitch talk about this book without talking about how much they cried or inserting a video of like from their reading vlog of when they read it to show how much they were bawling. 1,000 Splendid Suns is a breathtaking novel set against the volatile events of Afghanistan's last 30 years, from the Soviet invasion to the reign of the Taliban to post-Taliban rebuilding, and puts the violence, fear, hope, and faith of this country in intimate human terms. It is a story of 2 generations of characters brought jarringly together by the tragic sweep of war, where personal lives, the struggle to survive, raise a family, and find happiness are inextricable from the history playing out around them. I have And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini, but I have not read it yet. I had to get it for a class and then wound up going with a different book for the paper. Excited to read this. Again, you'll see me read it because I'm planning to do reading vlogs for everything I read this year. And last but not least, finally the end of this horribly long, not horribly, finally the end of this incredibly endless TBR that I've made for myself. It's incredibly ambitious. I'll never get through all these books. A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. To add on to this, I didn't get the book because I don't think I'm gonna get to it. I don't think it's enough to pull me in, but Anxious People is also by him, so I'm interested to see that. I've heard nothing but good things about this man's writing. The blurb for this is, at first sight, Ove is almost certainly the grumpiest man you will ever meet, a curmudgeon. Haven't heard that word in a long time. It's gonna be my 13th reason. Come on. A curmudgeon with staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. That sounds familiar. People think him bitter and he thinks himself surrounded by idiots. Ove's well-ordered, solitary world gets a shake-up one November morning when the appearance of new neighbors, a chatty young couple, and their 2 boisterous daughters, who announce their arrival by accidentally flattening Ove's mailbox with their U-Haul. What follows is a heartwarming tale of unkempt cats, unlikely friendships, and a community's unexpected reassessment of the one person they thought they all had figured out. A word-of-mouth bestseller that has caused a sensation around the world. Frederick Backman's irresistible novel about the angry old man next door is an uplifting exploration of the unreliability of first impressions and a gentle reminder that life is sweeter when it is shared with other people. Ove is all you need. I love this. Okay, so unfortunately, this wound up at the end of my TBR, but I think this is probably going to be one of the first things that I wind up reading because that makes me feel happy, and I'm probably going to try and do that sooner rather than later. But that is it. That is the end of my TBR for the year 2025. I know I'm already a month in, and which means I'm a month late with getting things read, but I'm hoping to get a head start on March, I guess, since we're already in the first week of February. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully I see you again. Make sure to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, I think. Hit the notification bell, isn't that what they say? The YouTubers? I'm new to this, so I don't know. Thank you all so much for being here. I've enjoyed talking with you and sharing my time with you, and I will see you in the